Okay, cool. All right, so let's just get started. Thank you for, I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you and just talking about, habits. That is something that I really work towards, a lot of behavioral changing and, deciding, because I know for my journey, um, it wasn't until I decided to make those changes, because, I had people tell me, I used to live with my mom. She's like, come on, let's go work out, let's go walk. And I'd be like, I don't want to, that's not for me. And until I decided to make that change of like, I'm just done being tired, I'm done being overweight, like something clicked in me where I, decided to make that decision. But also came with guilt, right? Being a first time mom and deciding like, okay, I'm going to go. I started with Zumba, right? So I would go, okay, I'm going to leave my baby here with my dad and I'm going to go take some time off. That was a little hard for me to deal with, that guilt. So I would like to start off strong and just kind of walk us through how can we deal with some like mindset shifts that, people can start, especially for my moms, right? When they start feeling that guilt or that shame of, when they do make that decision of taking care of themselves first and putting themselves first, how we can approach that.
What an amazing question. And I'm just stunned by the way you framed everything. You're absolutely right. We can never really change until we're ready. And we are ready when we want to. And we want to when we actually feel that need. And using just these descriptive words, I'm basically glossing over a whole lot of neuroscientific changes that take place at a substrata level in the body. And I'll cover some of them to actually so give us a better understanding. Yeah. But before I even do that, getting straight to the answer of your question, we are ready to make that critical mind shift change, which we need in order to improve ourselves, when we feel it, when we feel that something has changed fundamentally inside us. And at that point, we don't have to look very deep. We don't have to analyze it too much, because a lot of other things usually happen around the time in our life, and we don't have the headspace, the bandwidth to actually deal with those things at that time. But we feel we need to do something. So that's a good starting point. The moment we feel it, it's difficult to describe, but everybody who has that feeling will absolutely recognize it. They'll think, okay, I'm ready for a change. And the moment they're ready for a change, the next thing is, what should I change? And usually the answer to that is everything, and it's impossible.
Right.
So we always start with what is easiest. Is it easier to watch our nutrition? Is it easier to get a little bit more rest? Is it easier to be a bit more accountable in our life? Is it easier to get a little bit more exercise, walking, stretching, riding a bike, whatever is easiest? Is it easier to organize our day a little bit better so that we have better energy management and we can achieve everything that's required of us, and we don't feel that constant sense of guilt that we're failing. We're failing those we're responsible for, failing ourselves, failing our own expectations and those around us, which is, an entire sort of slippery slope to go down. So that's the moment that things change, and that's how we approach them. And what that looks like in terms of practicalities is we make a plan. We just take a piece of paper, or we can use our phone and some kind of note-taking app, and we just put down, what is it going to look like, this change for us at a practical level? If we make the decision in our head, it means that we're neurochemically now predisposed to go through whatever effort is required of us. So we're in a very good place. And now we need the practicalities, because without those practicalities, our willingness is going to dissipate. Things are going to siphon our attention away. They're going to sap our energy. They're going to weaken our focus, and we will not achieve what we want to achieve. So the practicality is going to be perhaps, if we talk about organizing our day, perhaps before we go to sleep, we plan the next day, or we wake up a little bit earlier and we actually plan the day ahead. So now we have an idea of what it is we need to accomplish, what are the tasks which are going to challenge us, and how our day is going to look like. If we're going to exercise, we need to know when, what, how long for. We need to know that. So we need to know if it's going to be cycling, we need to have a bike, a path, and we need to have the time allocated. If it's going to be doing a bit of dance, Zumba, whatever it is, space, clothes if necessary. If you're at home, you can do it in your PJs, and you can how long for? 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So we need to have that planning in place. So these are the practicalities. And to add a bit more science in this now. Essentially, the mind shift comes with changes around us and changes inside us. We are all products of our circumstances, our past included. And when things change around us, perhaps, in addition to the family, we reach a certain age, our friends move away, something has changed around us. And then we feel that shift inside us that says either we change or we're going to be trapped in a situation we don't like forever. Neurochemically, that inside us leads to specific changes in our chemistry, which make us feel uncomfortable. It's elevated cortisol and dopamine and all these things which create a little bit of stress and create a little bit of discomfort. And inside our brain, the moment we make that decision, essentially what has happened is that critical levels have been reached. Those critical levels of neurochemicals come with an electrical charge of their own, and negative, positive, the thresholds are reached and our brain fires and we make the decision. And that is the neurochemical basis of our motivation.
Definitely. And I had to be motivated at first, right? And this was years ago. Like, I have 3 boys now, and I've been able to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And, like you said, I plan my exercises. These are the days that I'm going to go work out. But it wasn't until I was like, I would see my mom, she would invite me, and I would like, no, thank you, I don't want to go. And I kind of started seeing the benefits that she was having, right? And so that kind of inspired me a little bit. I was like, okay. It got to the point where I was like, I've had enough. And so until that point, I decided to be like, okay, let's go ahead and do what we're gonna do, right? So it helped that we had that I had the support, right? Because I don't think I would have done it as at that moment if she didn't keep like telling me, right? She was leading by example. And so I continued my health journey again throughout this entire time. And what I hear a lot of people these days, like you said, I'm all about goals. I'm all about planning. Like, these are the days that I'm doing this. And like, I have this mom that I meet at the soccer field every Tuesday and Thursday. I see her, and she sees my Instagram, she sees my stories, and she's like, you're always working out, right? And she's like, I work out one day and then I don't work out for like the rest of the week, right? And so a lot of people have that like scheduling, and they're like, okay, I'm just gonna go work out, but they don't have a plan. They don't know what they're gonna do, or if they do show up at the gym, they're just kind of like all over the place. They're just like, I'm just gonna do this today or this random exercise this day, and they're not seeing results, which I think your book had a lot of insight on, specifically just to maintain and see results without doing all these things, right? It doesn't have to be like 2 hours at the gym. A lot of people think they have to spend all that time there, and it's not in fact that. Can you go over a little bit of that? Because I think a lot of people misconcept that with 2-3 hours at the gym. Like, moms, I don't have time for that. Like, there's no way.
Absolutely. And I'm smiling because what you describe is the situation of so many people I talk to. And this is what happens. If we don't know what to do, how to start, we tend to think it's a big thing. We need to allocate an hour or 2 or 3 hours. It's going to be regular. We tell ourselves, and we haven't got the time for that. We don't know what to do. So when we actually get to the place or the moment when we are going to do it, now we have all these obstacles in front of us. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? What impact is it going to have? Am I accomplishing my goals? All these things are thoughts which take up energy. They increase our level of anxiety. They make the task of exercising, which is stressful enough on its own, even harder. And then we become very disinclined to repeat that experience the next day because it was so unpleasant. So then we put it off. And it can be so much easier, right? And you're right. In my book, essentially, I use a lot of what we know from exercise science. We know that the body and the brain adapt to signals which we send them. And if those signals are consistent, and there are studies on this, they looked at subjects exercising 5 times a week at a low to medium intensity, and then subjects exercising 2 or 3 times a week at a higher level of intensity. And then they measured all their biomarkers, they measured strength gains, they measured their fitness gains in terms of aerobic capacity, blood pressure, and blood oxygen levels, all those things. And this is what they found. And this is over a period of 6 months. The ones who exercised regularly actually achieved greater strength gains by a small percentage. They had better biomarkers across the board. They had better cardiovascular fitness across the board. Now, the differences are not huge, I must say. It's like, it's so massive that definitely it gives them a massive advantage. But considering that their energetic output was so much lower, that they could actually exercise every day, it's amazing. And if we are talking about lifelong fitness, if we're talking about habits which we must sustain, they must be easy to access. They mustn't take a lot of our energy. We don't have a lot of energy every day. Most days when the things are going okay, this is brilliant. But a lot of the days, things don't go okay. There's a crisis, there's some problem,
Right.
the weather is bad, all those
That's
things.
mom life, you had a bad night's sleep, the kids are sick, you had a fight, fought with my husband, there's all kinds of triggers, family members, whatever the case is, there's days that a lot of people are like, I don't have the motivation or I don't have this. And so it's just really hard to feel that, as far as like, I have to work out every day, or it's something that I push towards, that I know, I'm not sure if it was in your book, but I just push for, like, if you've never strength trained before, just start with like 2 days a week, like, or one. If two seems still far off reach, one day, it doesn't have to be this massive thing, as long as you're putting that effort towards your health.
Absolutely. I mean, always start with what you can. This is the rule number one, right? Because you need to make it easy. Second thing is, when you are doing it, make sure it's something which you can do day after day. So, and obviously, we're not just talking about strength training, we're also talking about some kind of aerobic sort of work, a little bit of coordination, a little bit of balance, a little bit of stretching. And it doesn't have to be very long. This is what we know. We know that if we exercise the body for 1 minute, just 1 minute, the neurochemical changes that take place in the bloodstream are identical to if we exercise for a whole hour. There's no difference there. And that means that our hormonal profiles, which change because of those neurochemicals, are also identical. And those hormonal profiles then have a beneficial impact on every major organ in the body. So if we were to take an extreme example and take a person who exercises just 1 minute a day for a year, are they going to be visibly different by the end of the year? The chances of that are very slim. However, if we look at their biomarkers, they're going to be significantly different. Their blood pressure is going to be better. Their stress levels are going to be lower. Their ability to coordinate their body is going to be better. The health of the internal organs, heart, liver, intestines, brain, are going to be better just on that 1 minute a day because of the consistency. Because essentially, we are sending a signal from the body to the brain for these adaptations to take place, because the signal is consistent. And then the brain says, okay, I can allocate some resources towards those beneficial changes because I can see they're needed.
Right.
So that's the magic of consistency. So that's the magic of actually exercising. You can exercise a minute, exercise for 2 minutes, 5, 10, 20, whatever you can do. And I made a point of including workouts in my book that are customizable to your time. And there's some workouts that only take a minute or two, and they actually help you decompress, help you work to get these neurochemical changes in the bloodstream with very little time.
That's crazy. I was listening to this other podcast, and they were actually talking about this study. I don't know if you've heard about it, but they were comparing like a sedentary lifestyle. It's way worse than being a smoker.
Absolutely. Like
so-
smoking a pack a day. If you smoke a pack a day, the effects on your health from smoking, I think it's 20 or 25 cigarettes in one pack. If you smoke that many cigarettes in one day, they affect your internal organs so badly. And it's the same if you're sitting down all day and you don't move your body.
And just like what you're saying, it doesn't take much. It's something that I always instill in, my clients is, every hour, just do like 10 squats, do some push-ups, move around, get that blood flow going. And like you said, it really helps. I've heard with like insulin levels, hormone profile, like you were mentioning. And it doesn't take much effort. And I really like to kind of make that a big thing, because again, I'm very big on like strength training. I love lifting heavy, but I think people only kind of focus on that and not on, the small changes that they can do. And I think it's very important to really focus on, again, the little changes that you can do will make a big impact. And again, you're not going to see like a six pack, in that moment or in that short time frame. But I think your work and a lot of what you speak of is how we live that longevity, right? That health span, the quality of our life. And if it's just that 1 minute, it's definitely going to make an impact, 10, 20, 15 years from now, as far as that little bit of effort.
Absolutely. And I think, as you mentioned, this time span, the apparent obvious issue here is that a lot of the times we find it very difficult to imagine ourselves in the future, because we feel so great now. Even if we don't exercise, we're all relatively okay in terms of health, or relatively young. And it's very difficult for us to actually realize how much weaker we're going to be, how much not so healthy we're going to be if we do nothing. Because now we feel great and we think this is going to be a situation forever. And this is not the case. We know that if we don't exercise after the age of 35, every year we lose 8% of muscle mass.
Right.
And muscles not only help keep our body mobile, but they also maintain stress levels because they make us more active. They produce hormones which affect the way the bones work, which produce signal hormones, which affect how the brain works, because they help strengthen the calcium ion channels in the brain, which are needed for signaling pathways, which maintain brain health. So these small changes, as you say, doing 10 squats or even doing 2 squats, but doing them regularly, doing a few push-ups, going for a walk outside, feeling the air around us and actually getting those signals in, putting a little bit of me time in the day, it doesn't matter how little it may be, that's actually there for us. So we can decompress, so we can feel ourselves inside our body, enjoying who we are. These have a massive impact in our long-term health by lowering stress levels, which chronic stress brings chronic inflammation. Inflammation affects pretty much every organ in the body. It impacts negatively on how those organs then operate. And in the long term, it causes tremendous damage. The insulin response, which you mentioned, but also it impairs pretty much the function of every major organ. Impairs the heart. It can lead to heart disease. We can get arteries begin to sort of not work so well. We can get strokes. Diabetes is one, obesity the other. All those things which we know are bad for us, which we can avoid if we get into that habit of every day doing a little bit something for us, which is just for us.
Right. No, I definitely, resonate with that. One of my biggest fears, because I see it in some of my older family members, right? I have an aunt. She's very dependent on her kids. She has diabetes. I mean, she literally fell last year, almost tripped over a little toddler in her house, and she broke her wrist. And she's just having a tremendous amount of health issues. But she doesn't go outside. She doesn't walk. She just stays home, watch TV. She's 70. But that's one of my biggest fears. Like, I don't want to be a burden to my kiddos. I want to be able to be agile and move, and like, you inspire me. You're a little bit on the older side, and when I see like older people that have muscle and they're just pushing heavy, like, that's inspiration for me. Like, I want to live a good quality life. And my dad, he was diagnosed with colon cancer at age 32, and recently is going through some health stuff himself. And so recently, I got some blood work done, and I got, genetic testing and all this good stuff. And it came back with a high risk of like Lynch syndrome. And so I know by not just eating healthy, but building muscle. I've read that is very cancer protective. So it's very important, right? It's not just about looking good and having that six pack. The summer's here. Everybody's trying to do all the cardio and, finish out strong so they can show, their summer bod. But I think it's, again, more of that long-term health. Like, I don't want to be a burden. I want to be able to fend for myself in my 70s and my 80s, because I see close family members and how they are and how, of a burden they are. And I just don't want to be that. And so that's definitely a motivation for me to continue on. And sometimes it's really hard to portray that to people because, like you said, they don't see past, oh, in 20 years, that's so long, that's like, oh, that's forever, that won't be, but you're there. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm feeling tired all the time. I feel sluggish. I'm putting on weight. My hormones are all over the place. And it's when the doctors start giving you like, okay, well, just take this, right? It's normal. It's considered normal, but no, it's not normal. And it could have been prevented, by taking action now.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought this up. It's absolutely not normal to feel like that. It is not normal to have to medicate yourself every day just to get through life. This is not normal. And a lot of the major diseases we face, including cancer, as you mentioned, can be prevented by exercise. And you're right, there's been a study recently released that showed that people who lift heavy, like yourself, essentially activate specific neurochemicals through the muscles that hunt down cancerous cells in the bloodstream and eliminate them. So that's, it is fascinating to see that. The body is designed to last, but it is not designed to last if we don't use it, because then the signals which it's going to get from our activity are going to be inadequate for the changes that it needs to make in order for it to actually help us as we get older. Now, the good news is, and I'm 60, you're right, I'm a little bit, so.
You look really good though. You look better than my dad is 62. My dad does not look like you, not even like my father. No, but my father-in-law does not look like you. So you're looking great.
Thank you. But here's the thing. We know that the aging body, we age every year. And by the time we get to 70, however, the aging process actually slows down. So all the gains we have made up to that point then are easier to keep for the next 20, 30 years, provided we still keep working out. It's not like we're going to stop. But that massive loss, which appears inevitable if we do nothing, now becomes a lot less of a burden because it's not going to be so great. So if we are actually willing to exercise, the body will respond. There was a study done in Japan, which has the largest number of nonagenarians in the world, and these are people who live in their late 90s. And they took, quite ambitiously, I thought, 95-year-olds, and they tested them over a 100-meter sprint, and then they put them on a 3-year training regime to see if they could actually improve their time. So basically, they were looking to see if a 95-year-old body that exercises and has sort of basic nutrition, nothing too crazy, is able to put on enough muscle to actually reduce the 100-meter sprint time that they recorded when they started the study. And they found that they actually did. So if we can put muscle between the ages of 95 to 98, we can certainly do it before. And it's up to us to actually have that connection with our future self, to say, I'm going to be 70, I'm going to be 80, I'm going to be 90. I don't want to be immobile. I don't want to be a burden to anybody. I don't want to feel I'm trapped in my body. I want to feel that life is still mine to enjoy within certain parameters, and I can do pretty much what I want. And if we create that picture, link to it emotionally, then we're highly motivated to continue doing things which help us achieve it.
No, definitely. And that's very impressive, right? That they can, on a 95-year-old, like,
crazy.
I don't
it's
know
crazy.
a lot of people that can do that at their age now, right? Yeah. So we've talked a lot about strength training and moving the body a little bit. Let's dive into food, right? Because I like to say nutrition is not just the food we eat, it's mental nutrition, it's spiritual nutrition. But talking about, moving our body and building the muscle, how does food incorporate into, those gains or those goals, or how can we achieve that um, in building the muscle, right?
Yep, absolutely. Okay, food is really important because it basically is the fuel we need in order to function. So the food we consume is the substance that makes us and the substance that powers us. Obviously, there's a lot of chemical processes that need to take place, and not all foods are equal. Now, it is hard to be prescriptive at this level simply because everybody's going to be a little bit different. Their environment is going to be different, their family structure is going to be different, their socioeconomic conditions are going to be different. So this is what I will say. Provided the food that you eat is as wholesome as possible, so it's not processed, you're on a good path. And if you reduce sugar content in your diet, that's a good thing to do. And then if you can also manage without going crazy, just reduce a little bit of the fat content, that's also fantastic. And if you make those changes, I think you're on a good path. And if you want to actually go one level higher, look to reduce, if you can, when you can, your consumption of processed meats, so you don't have those at all. And generally, your consumption of meat. Not that meat is not important in a diet, it absolutely is, because it delivers a lot of amino acids, which we need for protein. However, they have found that the wrapper that the protein that we need is delivered in leads to a certain amount of inflammation. And this goes through the roof if the meat is processed. So I would say, cut out processed meats from your diet, like completely. And if you reduce meat and supplement that extra protein that you need through plant-based sources, then you're on a great path for actually having a long, healthy life. And if any of this sounds really difficult, you just do what you can, always. What is the easiest thing to change? I gave you a very big picture, and again, without being very prescriptive. So the reason I did that is because you cherry pick what you can do, make it work for you, and then you'll find that over time, you'll be in a better position to constantly improve on that. Like we improve on exercise. We start small, then we do something else. As we get fitter, our horizons broaden, our understanding gets deeper, the connection with our body becomes better. We listen to it more, we understand it better. And then we end up doing more and more things and becoming amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was just thinking, it's like I love turkey bacon, but I know it's like processed meat. So I've been having this internal fight. Like I should really, because I have it pretty much like every single day. But I know it's very, high in protein and it's a little bit on the leaner side, but I'm very conscious that it's very high in sodium, and it's on the wrapper. So it's just like you're kind of confirming, like maybe I should lay off a little bit on, because I always think, oh, well, just I don't eat ham, or I don't eat the hot dog meat. This is better quality. That's kind of how I justify it a little bit. But going with the plastics, there's so much going on with plastics too right now, as far as like the microplastics,
Yes.
The buildup in our brains, or it's causing people to hold on to fat, and so much damage going on internally that obviously we can't see it. We're drinking from the water bottle. The other day I made a comment to my husband because he loves water bottles, and that's all. We're in different homes right now. He's working out of the city, so we kind of go visit every other weekend or so. And I was like, oh my God, I love this, microplastic water. It tastes amazing. Like, because I'm always pushing, like, we need to drink from glass. We need to drink from like stainless steel cups. But it's just like easier for him to just grab a water, and that's how he gets his water. And like, I just grab my waters, and, I have for one first thing in the morning. And I was like, as long as you're staying hydrated, if that works for you, that works for you, right? But if you're already there where you're being conscious about the food that you eat, or the water that you're drinking, I kind of start going minute and really figuring out, I was like, okay, what else can I start changing, right? As far as, the meats, or, like you said, intake fat. Can we dive in a little bit into that? Because a lot of people talk about, well, what kind of fat, right? I eat whole eggs, I like olive oil, what kind of fats would you say maybe reduce? Because I'm a very big cheese person. I Recently, I stopped drinking almond milk and I've kind of incorporated more whole milk, right? Because that's less processed. Like, because sometimes almond milks have a lot more emulsifiers, sugars. And so I'm trying to like change some things in my routines as well. So I figured, let's go ahead and ask this because I've been kind of diving deep a little bit more into this nutrition. And I've been actually adding a little bit more fat into my diet. So when you say reduce fat, what do you mean by that?
Well, there's fat and there's fat. So let's take that distinction so we can understand it better. There are some types of meat that are already fatty in terms of the fat content that they contain. They're not lean meat. And we like that. We absolutely love it because the past we came from was calorie deficient or calorie it was difficult to get the calorific intake that we get today. So any time that we found fat in that environment, which usually was going to be a hunt of a big game animal.
That's why I say, like nature, usually if you have protein, you have fat. That's
Yes.
usually how it comes. That's how usually nature intends it, right? When you have an egg, you have the yolk and the protein. You have steak, you have, fat and protein.
Yes,
So
yes. And even some fruit, okay? I mean, there's also fat in, vegetable fat in specific fruit. And when we came across those food sources in the past, we would gorge on them because, we didn't have refrigerators. And our body is really good at taking in fat and quickly filling up our fat stores because the future ahead is uncertain. There may be lean times and we need those energy reserves. Unfortunately, we don't live in those times anymore. We live in a calorie-rich environment. Yes. I mean, in my refrigerator the other day, I calculated I had at any time between 10 and 15,000 calories. And I thought, there's such like excessive amount to just be there within reach, like 15 paces away from me. So it's that kind of temptation. So we need to be aware when we consume meat, for example, we try to get for as lean meat as possible. So we get the benefits of protein, the benefits of eating meat, if that's what we like, without taking in excessive fat. There's going to be some fat there regardless because of the way it's cooked, how it absorbs some things, how it absorbs some oils, etc. Same thing with vegetables. Even avocado. We can gorge on avocados because they taste delicious and they have a really high fat content.
My favorite. I was like, if you need fiber, avocado is always a go-to. Like we love wok, so wok and chips.
Yes, absolutely. But that's exactly these are the things which, unfortunately, right? Things which we love eating are really bad for us. We love eating them for a reason because we have that propensity to eat them because in the past they were not easily available and today they are, and we don't realize that. Same with sugar. Sugar was not easy to come across in that world. I suspect it would probably be a beehive. Would come across wild honey. We would just gorge on it. Great. But today we just have candy bars, and there's even sugar in bread, and there's sugar in foods, and there are drinks with sugar. It's just crazy. And sugar accumulates in our body very quickly. It does so many bad things for us from in terms of health outcomes. So we need to be aware of those things and just exercise judiciously. A selective process that tries to eliminate some of the things which are bad for us, even though we tend to absolutely love them.
Yeah, definitely. I love, what you're saying because it really resonates. It's just start a little bit and just small changes. It doesn't have to be all bad, but I do want to add, what do you think about protein shakes? And because you mentioned candy bars and candy and things like that. What about protein shakes? Or you did mention you prefer like a plant-based kind of more style, get your protein intake. But what about, a lot of people supplement with shakes, including myself, when I'm trying to hit my protein goal and trying to make sure I have enough protein. What would you say to that?
Okay. Protein shakes used correctly are massively beneficial. They ensure we have enough protein in our body for the building blocks of muscle without having excess calories and without having excess fat. So without having to deal with those. So we call our macros, right? Our macros are controlled and our protein is on point. There are shakes and shakes. So if you are sort of taking the kind of protein that bodybuilders take, which has all sorts of additives in it, that has other side effects, which we can devote hours and hours going into it because it's crazy.
Yeah,
So
no.
I would say that you take protein shakes and you exercise the same careful approach to the selection process of what you actually take as you would with any other kind of food. So try and have protein that's actually maybe plant-based, if possible, or it's clean protein, as clean as possible in terms of there are no other additives. It doesn't have any sugar, which I know makes it sound horrible, but it actually, you know, so approach it that way. And certainly by using protein shakes, it gives us a massive sense of control over our diet in the long term, because we can hit the targets we need to in terms of protein without over extending a calorie limit, without going overboard in a sugar intake or a fat intake, and that's absolutely critical.
Yeah, whenever I do get like a little sugar craving, or my dinners sometimes turn to like Greek yogurt, and I like blueberries, and I put like a coconut flavored, protein there. If I'm like, oh, I'm kind of low, let me just add that on there. And, it's like a little treat. Blueberries are, they have a little bit of sugar, but they're on the lower calorie end. So I like to kind of have that at night when I am having those cravings or need something sweet, but it's not like over empowering, as opposed to having like the candy bar or ice cream, or something that's probably more processed. Because something that you do touch a lot on, I think, is like the food and all of, like, right now in the US there's a lot of stuff going on with our government really focusing on eliminating a lot of these dyes that are in our food, right? They've been there for years, and with this new presidency, and we've seen a lot of changes. And not just, it started with red dye, now they're all eliminating blue and yellow. And I try to tell my kids, like, if you find red on the wrapper, like, you look through it. If it has a dye, we're not getting it. So I've like teaching my kids, it's like you're eating a crayon. Why would you want to eat that, right?
I think that's brilliant. I think that that educating your children at that level with that kind of simple approach, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And you mentioned shakes before, and what I would add here, particularly for women, is that there's a thing going around about the anabolic window, and I need to explain that. Is when do we take a protein shake after exercise? And the anabolic window is the term given to the period after exercise, which is anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour, when you take that shake and it has the best effect. It's been one of those laws from bodybuilders for a very long time, and they've done extensive studies on that. And this is what they found, which is fascinating. If you're a guy, you can take a shake anytime. You don't have to take it after exercise. It will have the same effect on your body, because your body looks for the availability of protein in your system in order to build muscle. But if you're a woman, actually there is an anabolic window. It seems unfair.
Really?
Yeah. And you should take it within the 30 to 45 minutes, maybe an hour tops after exercise. And that will give you the best benefits. And if you take it after that, it's still a little bit beneficial. Obviously, it does some good, but it doesn't give you as much effect as you think it does, which is, like I said, it's completely unfair. It's the way the hormonal cycle in the body, in the female body, changes on a daily basis. And, guys have that stability, which helps them, and women do not. So we need to be aware of that.
That's interesting. You always hear like that bro science, right? Like the bodybuilders know they, carry their Tupperware and carry their shakes and make sure they had their meals. So when they were done with their workouts, they have their supplements or whatever they needed to, get them fueled either for the day or for the next workout. I've heard that. I've heard the opposite. I've heard that it doesn't matter as long as you get it in within like a 24-hour span. But I can see the difference between a man and a woman as far as how they strength train can be different, and how the muscle building synthesis and, building that muscle can be even more impactful if you go ahead and feed it right away. Because I have heard that before.
Yeah. And it's something to keep in mind. So this actually, I mean, this is being smart, right? It's just devising personal strategies which reflect a situation, the sex we are, the age we are, and the training we do to actually help us achieve more with what we're doing, which is a smart thing to do because we're optimizing our effort for the gains that we want to make.
Right. And this is just for the people that want that, like, a little bit more, right? For those mom or the women who wants just like, we want a little bit more results, maybe try that. Because I feel like that might be splitting hairs a little bit as far as like, if you can get it in whenever you can. Optimally, if you can get it in after your workout would be great. But again, I think that might be splitting a little bit hairs in ways of like, do what you can. If you can do it that way and it works in your schedule, it works with you, great. Try it that way and see if you see any difference. But I think I've heard and read that like within the 24-hour span of you like getting in your protein, you'll be okay. It's not going to make like a big difference. But I can see it being different for women, right? Because a lot of these studies are based in males. And
yes, absolutely. Again, it seems very unfair. A lot of the studies are based on males because it's easier. Okay, the female body has more complicated neurochemistry because of the menstruation cycle, and that tends to throw off a lot of the studies. And also, there's when experiments are carried out or research is carried out, there's always the potential for female subjects to get pregnant, and then all sorts of ethical issues come into play. And most researchers, I mean, they can screen for that certainly, but they would rather, simplify their life. So they tend to just go for guys. So then they treat women as honorary guys, which is again wrong and unfair. And
right.
Coming back to what you said earlier, absolutely. I mean, this is not, when I said this about the anabolic window, it's not something that you need to sort of add as an extra load to your day. But if you're going to have a shake anyway, then having it at a time when it's going to work for you better, it's just a smart thing to do because you're going to have it anyway. Now, if you're not into shakes and you think, oh, do I need to add them? No, I mean, if it's working for you, it's working for you. So you don't need to worry about it.
Right. Now, I try to hit like 140 grams of protein. And sometimes if you're focusing on whole natural foods and not processed foods, it can be kind of hard to get
extremely hard.
that level. And so shakes have been a staple. I take them in at least 3-4 times a week, because if not, I'm going to be short. And usually it's the days that I work out that I make sure that is the day that I work out, and I make sure I get the shake in that day. So at least I met my goal that day that I got my workout in to provide my muscles with the fuel and recovery as well. Because when I don't eat enough protein, I can feel I maybe not as strong, or I feel kind of sluggish. I can definitely see the difference when I'm not hitting my protein intake in the gym, as far as like my gains or my strength, or trying to increase my power.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because if you're not getting enough protein, this is what happens. You send a signal to your body, to your brain from your body, that you need to strengthen your body because you're exercising, you're doing resistance work. The brain processes it, says, great, this is a signal, it's strong enough, we need to allocate energy, we need to build stronger muscles, stronger tendons, stronger bones, all the structure that gives us strength. Stronger neurological connections, so the signal from the brain to the body goes, the mind-body connection. And then it says, okay, how much energy do we have? And you haven't got enough.
Right.
So now it says, okay, I need to deprioritize some things in order to prioritize this. And what does it deprioritize? Perhaps a little bit of the energy we have for attention, our attention span, or the energy we have to do work or to read or to think critically, because there's only so much energy in the body. And it deprioritizes some things, but it's not like it cancels them out. It doesn't say, oh, you don't need to think today, so don't worry about your brain.
Right.
So there's still energy drain on that side. So now it has some energy to put into building the things which you asked it to build, but nowhere near enough to actually do it adequately. So this is the prioritization war going on inside us. And the effect of that is exactly what you feel. You feel a little bit sluggish, you feel a little bit off, kind of, not as sharp. And you sense it, something is off, but you're not sure what it is. And it's just that. energy availability for your body to do all the things you ask it to do. So it's really important to have that perspective that if you're trying to do something with your body and it's going to take energy to do it, you need to give it sufficient energy resources to do it.
Definitely. I think I go into the extreme sometimes. Like I've helped teachers, I've helped dancers, stay-at-home moms, and they're not really into like counting calories. And I meet them where they're at, right? I try to focus, if we are tracking something, we are tracking like protein and fiber. Those are the two most important macros that I would focus on tracking. Something that you do say is you can never improve what you don't measure, right? So
absolutely.
A lot of people, are triggered. They don't want to step on the scale, or if they're building muscle, the scale goes up. And they're kind of like, oh, I need to dial it down. I need to start eating less. I know I'm gonna throw my sister-in-law under the bus here. She's not eating enough protein. She has that mentality of like, I need to do all the cardio, but it is something that I feel like is essential, and it doesn't have to be forever, right? Like I don't track my protein every single day. I go like some weeks without, tracking, but I kind of focus on what I'm doing because it gives me that power to later on do it intuitively, where I don't necessarily have to focus on scaling my food or hopping on the scale, and it just comes natural to me. But I think there is a moment, place, and time for us to really measure these things. So what would you say, like, how would you want somebody to track their success?
Okay. I am generally, and I love everything you said here. You covered so many things. Generally very careful about telling people to track their weight for many different reasons. First of all, as a general metric, it's not a very good one. It fluctuates daily. It fluctuates for a whole lot of different reasons, particularly if you're a woman. So it makes you anxious for no reason. We tend as a society to judge women by their weight, which is totally wrong. And there's still remnants of that. And again, that's why I don't tell them to really step on the scales. There will necessarily come a time when they'll have to do that though. And they need to be aware that as your body gets stronger, your body weight may go up, but your clothes size will go down, because the body becomes tighter, it becomes fitter. So we need to basically link that metric of weight to other things. How do I feel inside my body? Do I feel better in control? Does it make me feel that I'm gaining control? I actually understand it better. I feel better when I move it. How does it feel when I dress it? Do the clothes fit better? Do I sense that, it kind of looks better? Those things are really important. And then that's a better way to link the weight metric to those other things which help us mitigate some of the anxiety which may come from just looking at the scale. And I have male friends who actually are crazy about it. One of them told me that, he checks his weight, and if it goes up a little bit, he diets. And I said, no, you can't do that. Because to me, why not? Because if you diet, you lose muscle. It's the first thing you lose. And he just wouldn't believe it. I had to show him all these studies. And he goes, well, what do I do then? I said, well, don't leap on the scales, because you're not actually overweight. You have this thing about your weight, and you want it to be fixed. And it's crazy. It can't be. You're exercising. So we had this discussion, and, it's not exclusive to women. That's why I'm very hesitant to say, just use, that as a metric. Used along with all the other things, it's a very good way of judging our progress, because we can see how where we're heading. We can also draw our own inferences from it. So if we see the scales go up by maybe a kilogram or two, and our clothes size goes down by a couple of kilograms, a couple of clothes sizes, then we can sort of think, okay, I'm putting on muscle, I'm stronger, I feel better, and that's what it is. So I can actually understand what the number actually means. And I think that's a healthier approach.
Definitely. And, honestly, I'm going to be very honest. I struggle with this myself. And like you said, I put on weight on the scale, but I actually bought some new jeans like a couple of weeks ago, and I thought I was a size, and I had to buy a smaller size. And I'm like, and it's like, I know I'm a coach, and I, tell my clients this, but I think I've struggled with my weight, and I have like my own issues that I put a lot of emphasis on the scale as well. But like you said, I'm buying clothes that are smaller, waist size, I might be going up a little bit on my bra size, and like I'm not small anymore, I'm medium, and that throws me off too. But I look leaner, right? I have that tone look that people talk about. But it's because I'm building muscle. So it's that body composition that matters most. Something that I do like to track with my clients, that I think is very important, is that waist to hip ratio. I like to do like body measurements, where I think it's like the Navy track test, where they like measure your neck, your waist, your hip, and just kind of do that. And there's like a mathematical formula that you can plug in here, and it'll kind of give you like your fat percentage. Those are two things that I like to measure with my clients. So we're just not focusing completely on the scale, because it triggers me a lot, and I have a hard time. I literally used to step on the scale like every single day, and now I tell myself, okay, I'm just gonna do it Friday and Mondays. Like those are the days that I'm gonna step, and then I'm gonna put it away, because I do place a lot of value on the scale. But like I said, I am buying smaller clothes. Like in jean sizes, I'm smaller. Like I look thinner. Like I'm building muscle. That's why the weight is going up. So I have to be like reminding myself that is why.
That's a really healthy approach, and you're very disciplined. So congratulations for that. Because yeah, the triggering which you feel is only testament to how powerfully all of us have been programmed by the external world to be judged by those scales. And in the past, I grew up in the 70s. It used to be the only metric. Every
Yes.
bathroom had a scale, every single bathroom. And people used to just jump on them in the morning and scream. So
Oh gosh.
It's good that we're changing that attitude a little bit, and the more we change, the better it is. And certainly, I think your disciplined approach is something that should be emulated. The scales have to be seen in the scale. What the readings say has to be seen in conjunction with all the other elements, and then it makes more sense.
Right. So I have one last question for you. Again, in my coaching, I really talk about that spiritually component. And you kind of talk about this in your book. You talk about our health span as a very meaningful concept. I decided to become a coach because I wanted to help people and moms that felt like I did. I felt very powerless. I felt like I was just doing it on my own sometimes, even though I've been overweight since I was like 6 years old. I am smaller now than I was in high school. High school,
Wow.
I was like 150 pounds. So I don't know the kilograms, divide by 2.2. So I've always been overweight. And I think that's why I have these struggles with my weight and, how I look and how I see myself. But at the same time, I found this purpose, right, of helping women and coaching them and really focusing on this behavioral habit and helping them find not just like, oh, let me just tell me what I need to eat or how much weight do I need to get to my goal, right? Can you kind of help us understand how, having purpose, helps us live better?
Yes, absolutely. And here's what I'll say. And your story is absolutely brilliant. It's fascinating because you made a decision to remake yourself, and then everything which you did acquired specific meaning for you because you had that kind of vision which gave you your own purpose, which then changed everything. And this is how, this is your who and your why, right? The classic example of sort of how we start a business. You say you begin with your who, and then you define your why, and that makes your business successful. We start with fitness. If you don't understand your who, if you don't understand your own drives a little bit, what makes you feel the way you do, then you will not really truly understand your why, and you have no sense of purpose. And sure enough, if you just blindly do some exercise, it will have some effect. But this is what we know. We know that exercise that actually has meaning for us, which we focus on as we do it, exactly the same exercise done to the same intensity, gives us 15%, up to 15% better results than exercise, which we just do blindly without thinking about it. So that's the power of purpose. That's the power of meaning. How it translates from something as abstract as this to the practicalities of the human body, it's like this. Whatever we feel has meaning for us is important to us. Our brain understands that because we focus on it internally. Then it prioritizes all the resources necessary in order for that to happen for us. So if we go and lift a weight, you and I, and I'm just sort of lifting it casually because, I'm there talking to you and just keeping you company, and we'll lift it exactly the same number of times. And let's say we have exactly the same potential for change. Okay, so we disregard sex, past history, and microbiome, and etc. Then you will get better benefits from it, doing exactly the same things I do, because I'm just casually keeping you company and doing it. And although we've done the same number of repetitions, it doesn't mean as much to me. So the signal the body sends to the brain is filtered through the brain's awareness of what it actually means for us, how imperative it is for us to change. And then it allocates the necessary resources for that change. And for you, it's really important. And for me, it wasn't. It was just, an afternoon spent talking to you. So
Right.
we wouldn't get the same results, even though we've done the same work. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's where meaning comes in. That's where purpose comes in. You have to say, okay, I'm doing this for a specific reason. It's really important for me, and actually feel it. And then the brain quickly allocates all the necessary resources for that change to happen to us and for us. So it is absolutely vital, in my opinion, to have that worked out, because it gives us so many more benefits. It makes everything we do feel better, but also it'll work faster for us. We'll see results faster. We'll feel better faster. Our biomarkers will change faster. Everything will happen a little bit faster. I think that's great.
Right. No, definitely agree. It's not like, as a coach, people expect for me to give them a plan. This is what you're eating. And I'm very, I think, different from that because I don't give meal plans. I kind of guide them through and to make better decisions. So so they know like this is what it takes to, commit and make these changes. But also, like you said, it gives them purpose and focusing more on like, okay, like really paying attention. Like this is the new me. This is who I'm becoming. And it improves their belief as far as like, I can do this, right? And so I think that's very powerful when you decide like, okay, I'm going to make this, change for me, and putting it into a perspective of like, I'm doing it without, even though with my support, I'm still doing it because I made that decision. And it definitely means a lot more than just giving out like a meal plan and an exercise program and that's it, like you're good to go. And so I think that's where coaching can be very powerful as well. So you're not alone. You know what you're doing with the help of somebody. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your clients are lucky to have you. You have a very enlightened and up to the minute scientific approach on this. Guiding somebody to find their path is way better than actually being prescriptive. We know that if you are prescriptive, the chances of getting it right are like less than 50-50. So it'll work for some people, it will not work for others. And by asking for a prescriptive approach, what people do is they abdicate responsibility from themselves to you, which is not a very good thing to happen. So yeah.
Yeah, my goal, I always tell my clients, my goal is for you not to need me. I mean, that's probably going to not, be the best, plan for like me to be super successful. But literally, my goal is for you to be able to do this forever, long term. And so if that's what it's going to take, yeah, it's going to be a little bit harder because we're figuring things out as we go. But once you get it and it clicks and what habits we need to have, what behaviors you need, you understand why you're doing certain things, then it's going to be so much easier for you to, pivot when you need to pivot, or, make decisions on the spot, or not throw in the towel when things are hard. So I think that's very, very important when it comes to deciding and having that purpose of making changes for yourself to be healthier, to be a better person, to grow. And I think, everybody goes through stages too, right? We're all on all walks of lives, whether, I have moms that are, young, work, stay at home, teenagers, all walks of life. So it's definitely different for everybody. It's not one, size approach, but having that decision and that having that purpose drive you to make those changes really makes a difference, whether you stick to it or not, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have a purpose, if you have it worked out, you're more likely to stick to it because you have that meaningful connection with what you're doing. And also, I think it's also necessary to stress that it's fine for your purpose to change, right? Because we are a process. We're constantly changing. So, the reasons why you're exercising at 20 and 25 are going to be different from, 30 and 35 and 40 and 45 and so on. So it's fine to understand that. It's not like your purpose then was false and your purpose here is better. It's
right.
not.
It's not a
Just,
contract that you're signing and you're like signing your life away. Okay, this is what I'm deciding. And that's the beauty of life, right? That, you can
absolutely.
change and it doesn't have to be perfect. And yeah. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
David, thank you so much. It was awesome having you today. Can you tell me where I can find your book, where I can find you on Instagram or your website?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast of a time, and I really love the way you approach everything. You can find me at davidamerland.com. I put out a lot of stuff there. Everything which I come out across studies and sort of boil them down to practicalities. If I get really excited about them, then I share them. If you Google me, you'll find all my socials, and you can find Build to Last on Amazon or any other bookshop. And if you order it from bookshop.org, you can pick it up from your local bookshop and support your local community. And I'm definitely all for that.
Awesome. Thank you, David. It was such a pleasure talking to you. I think I've learned quite a bit from you. So maybe we'll have a round number 2.
Absolutely. I'd love that. Thank you.
But at the same time, I found this purpose, right, of helping women and coaching them and really focusing on this behavioral habit